And then last week we talked about how love is kind. And the simpleness of being kind to someone is a great way to show that you love them. And we talked about the importance of the way you can show people that you're kind is by listening to them, right? By considering their needs, right? We looked at the story of when Jesus was walking through the busy crowd and helped two different people. And we said being kind isn't only to people who are of the same race or gender or social status. It doesn't matter. Christ calls us to be kind regardless. And he showed that in the two different people he was kind to as well. Today, we're going to talk about what love isn't, right? And what love doesn't do. And then obviously the opposite of that. A group of young adults discussed the subject of how do you say, I love you to someone? What is a way that you say, I love you to someone? These were some of their answers. To answer that, one wife shared how her husband had popped the question while she was with a group of her girlfriends. He had shown up unexpectedly, wearing his best suit, and in front of everyone. He took her hand, knelt down before her, and asked her to marry him. Another young lady said that her father had shown his love whenever her mother was having a particularly difficult week by waiting until she was out of the house and then cleaning it as best as he could in order to surprise her when she came home. One young man told of his mother loving and encouraging notes on the bananas that she put into his school lunchbox. And another related how one year her father had sold his prized shotgun in order to pay for her college textbooks. So these are different ways people use to show love. Each one of us have our own different way. I can give you the only example I can think of that was as of recently. Me and Dakota, I was at church on Wednesday. She wasn't able to make it, and I just preferred driving her car, and one of the headlights was not working that night. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. It wasn't working that night, so I went ahead and I got her car. I said, I'm going to just drive your car. She's like, yeah, that's fine. So I got it, came to church, and on the way to church, I noticed the gas light was on. Now, she works in Halifax, about 15, 20 minutes down the road or whatever, so I was like, ooh, I need to get gas later. So I do. I go after church, get the gas, come home, pull in, go inside. Think nothing of it. Just to show my love, right? Which, you can go, that's what you're supposed to do, but even if you're supposed to do it, that doesn't mean it's less loving, right? So, in the morning, I get a text message, and she says, thank you so much for putting gas in the car. And I was like, you're welcome, love you. And then she said, I asked, man, I bet you were surprised, weren't you? She goes, I literally got in the car, and I remembered I needed gas, and I go, And then she said, and then I remember you drove it, so it was even less gas. And then she's like, because the notifications come up, so she's like trying to hit the notification to see how much gas she has left, and it was like 250. She goes, how about that? He got gas, right? And it's sometimes just the simplest things that we can do to show anybody, not necessarily just your spouse, that you love them. And with that, I want to ask, is there anything that someone does for you or you've done for someone recently that you think isn't just saying I love you, but showing that I love you? Any examples at all anyone has? Come on. Oh, they're buying a meal for somebody. You got one? God bless them. I tell you what, look, food is a go-to way. You make some food, makes people happy. I tell you what, it's, yes.
I got a car. And it has serious
Yeah, he do love the doo-wop music.
Connie, she loves it too. She was going to have one. She's been after she didn't think I was going to do anything. So I bought it, packaged it up in Christmas present. When she opened it up, she said, what's that? I said, Siri's radio, you have an appointment for me to be installed.
Oh, that's even better. It's one thing to get one, but the appointment to get it installed is even better. And that kind of goes a little bit to last week as well. It feels so good when you don't feel like you're being heard, and then when you notice you are being heard. When you notice someone is listening to you, that's one great way to just show, hey, you're loved. Anybody else? Yes. Look, sometimes just being there for people really does the trick. I mean, I did the Emmaus walk, and that was some years ago now. And the big thing I took away from it is, man, the way that you can show love to someone is by giving them your time. And time is very, very valuable, whether we want to admit it or not. But when someone takes time from their life, from their schedule, from their priorities, and make sure that you're put in it, man, that's a special feeling. So, yeah. That's so sweet. Who wouldn't want a nice rose on Valentine's Day? And that's my point, guys, is when you love somebody, it's not necessarily, as we talk about love, right, it's not something that you just say. It's something that you show. Now, I'm not here saying you don't got to say I love you. You should still definitely say it. Honey, didn't you hear the pastor? I just got to show it to you. I ain't got to say it to you. Get off my back. I am not under that. I don't believe that. I think saying it is just as important. I think it's important to hear, I love you, but it's also important to show. Because especially, I'm trying to think of one of these. Basically, if you don't know somebody as well, like, you don't got to be like, I love you. Okay. That does come off a little bit, but that's when you get to show them that you love them. And see, there's a movie, me, I think movies, right? It's based off of a pretty true story, but we all know Mr. Rogers, right? Mr. Rogers, everybody loves Mr. Rogers. He was actually going to go, he was in the seminary, but then he got out. He was going to be a pastor, then he started this children's show. And this movie is based on a guy who wrote, different articles, a journalist, and they were doing inspirational people for like Time magazine or something like that. And the boss gave this investigative journalist who was on like probation for making too much trouble, she put him on doing a kind of I forget what you call it, but a biography kind of Mr. Rogers' page, right, in the magazine. And he goes and he sees how nice he is, right? And Mr. Rogers is asking, oh, how it's so good to see you. Oh, well, yeah. And he thought, man, this guy's got to have an agenda, right? He thought, ain't no way someone is this nice. Ain't no way someone loves people this much. Ain't no one someone cares. So he was looking for an agenda, and why Mr. Rogers was Mr. Rogers, right? And Mr. Rogers just loved people, right? And we know for a fact he had Christ. And in that, he loved for the sake of loving. And see, in the same way, I want you guys to know that when we show people love, it shouldn't be showing people love to get something back, right? It should be showing people love because Christ loved us. And that's what's going to change the world. It's not just simply loving people, but it's loving them without an agenda behind it. Loving someone without needing something else in return. Loving them just because. And anybody else, I don't want to skip, anybody else have any moments that they have that someone showed you love instead of just told you they loved you? Actions is definitely stronger than words. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right. Wow. And see, it's one thing, the money's nice, but you wouldn't have got that money if someone wouldn't have taken the time to think about you and put effort into trying to raise you that money. So that is wonderful. That is a wonderful showing of love. And see, and that's what I think is important, is the showing of that love isn't the money. Because that's not saying, I love you, here's $100. That shows I love. Money doesn't show you love. It's taking the time to raise the money, to be thinking of you in the midst of your day, that you have your issues, and it's so powerful. So today we're going to look at, last week we looked at verse 4 of 1 Corinthians 13, it says love is patient and kind. But we're going to move on to the last part of 4 and read on in 5. It says, love is not jealous or boastful or proud or rude. That's where we're going to stop. What is, see, I love it. Love is patient and kind. Got it? Check. Let me tell you some things love isn't, though, right? Chapter 13, 1 Corinthians chapter 13. So this is what love is not. It is not jealous or boastful or proud or rude or this or this. Like it has a good list. That's a good chunk because it knows. The Bible knows. Christ knows. God knows. There's some problems that we have when it comes to love because love, as great as it is, every action has opposite and equal reaction, right? A consequence. So love can bring you kindness. Love can be patient. Love can be wonderful. But love also is a great temptation. Love is a great, great temptation. So if it says love is not jealous or proud, what is the opposite of proud? Humble. I think it's just great because humbleness, humility, as we say, is so important in the walk of a Christian. I know, and I feel bad myself. I know it feels like every week, whatever I'm talking about, I say is so important. But guys, I want to tell you, being a Christian is simple but not easy. So there are a lot of facets to being a Christian, and humility is without a doubt one of them. And I noticed it, and I'm going to take a shot out in the dark as well with one. But Ron Brooks, do you know how you start your prayers? And then what do you say? We humble ourselves before you. And then what do you say when you start yours, Buster? You pretty much say, I think we humbly come before you or something like. I just know that there's certain people in here, you ain't going to hear the prayer request until humility is coming into play. And I think that's so awesome. I think we just kind of look over it sometimes. We look over the fact that almost weekly we hear about humility in the church. Because when we come into prayer, we need to humble ourselves. And you ask why? Well, because it's important to be humble because you stack up about this much to the Creator of heaven and earth, to your Savior. He is almighty and we are His servants. And we are His children. And we need to humble ourselves before them. If we go up to God with pride, pride comes when? Say it again. Pride comes before the fall, right? Pride comes before the fall. And if we have this overzealous sense of pride, we will fall. And when you account that into love, a love that is proud is not it's different. You say love is not proud. And you think, well, that's weird. I'm proud of the way I love my wife. I'm proud of the way I love my church. I'm proud of this. There's a difference between enjoying it and being, and that's why another version says boastful as well. There's a very big difference. Because you don't want to get to the point where it goes, I love you more than you love me. You don't believe me? Look how good I love you. Right? I love you so good. I'm the best lover there is. Oh, that sounds bad. Cut that out later. But you just love each other to the point where you try to do a love battle, right? And that's not what love is. Love is selfless, right? Love is selfless, and it's unconditional. And in those two different parts of love, pride cannot fit. Pride cannot fit. Jealousy cannot fit. And I think jealousy is a very difficult part. But let's look at a few. This is just in the Bible. I'm not going to give you verses or whatever. But let's look at a couple instances where people and stories or facets of the Bible that we know of someone being humbled in their life. So first let's look at Joseph. Before Joseph became the prime minister of Egypt, he had to spend time as a slave and be cast into the Egyptian prison. Okay? That's pretty humbling. He don't get to get the top spot before Christ humbles him. Then we look also before Moses, who grew up in a palace with the Pharaoh and became a great deliverer of Israel, right? So he grew up in this nice luxury. And then from there, we know him also as this amazing deliverer of the people of Israel, right? A guy who led them to the promised land, did miracles, things that none of us could imagine. But before he did that, let us not forget that he had to spend years as a shepherd in the fields of Midian, a very humbling experience. I think we think, well, this guy grew up in pure luxury and had to live on a farm. Farms back then, I'm assuring you right now, are not the farmhouses we think of today that you see on HGTV with the big old house and the sliding door. This was a hut by a field, and he lived there. And then, before that, he was high up. God humbled him, and then he exalted him, right? And then we look at another example. We see Saul of Tarsus, Saul that becomes Paul, became the great apostle to the Gentiles and writes most of the New Testament. He had to be humbled on the Damascus road by a blinding flash of light from heaven and the voice of the resurrected Lord. See, before Saul, who became Paul, the famous Paul of the New Testament, he was blinded for several days. Each one at a different degree. My point is, if these famous, amazing people from the Bible didn't just get everything their own way easily, they had to be humbled first. You best believe a God who is loving will humble you as well. Some people don't like to hear that. But God will humble you if you need it. But does that mean he doesn't love you? Quite the opposite. See, here in the Bible, it almost states that love is a humble love. If the love is not proud, then it is humble. And sometimes if Christ needs to show you the love that you need, it's going to be the tough love. The love that's going to have to humble you. The love that's going to have to knock you down on your tail. And we don't like to think about that. You know who else doesn't like to think about that? People who are either non-believers or on the fence of believing. They hate to think that God would humble you and put you in a spot that is tough and knock you on your keister. But as parents, I'm sure you guys can attest that sometimes that is necessary. And more often than not, the subject of your humbling often comes back and realizes the importance that it had. And in the same way, Christ says, I need to humble you sometimes because you're getting out of hand. You're becoming prideful, you're becoming proud, you're saying me, me, me. Just remind you, that's not going to work. So he humbles us. And sometimes you're kicking and screaming. Sometimes you go around your elbow to get to your feet or something like that. I mean, it's usually our fault. Let's just admit that from the get-go. It's usually our fault. But in the same way, God's love does not have boundaries. If we are prideful, if we are jealous, if we are rude, Christ's love still comes after us, right? Paul says that humility is a very important part of our love and relationships, and yet humility is often disregarded in today's society. Okay? You see a lot of pop stars, a lot of athletes, a lot of people who say, I'm the best, no one's better than me, I'm amazing. That is the culture that we live in, not a very humble culture. And the more that we don't talk about humility in the church, the more that our youth and even maybe us will start to get lured into the fact that I get me where I want to go. I think I've told you guys this in the past, but I had a friend of mine in college who would never let me say I. If I said I, he says, you mean through Christ? I was like, yeah, yes, of course, yes. Man, I had a great sermon. That I was given by Christ, who helped me prepare it and give it. And he's like, never leave Christ out of the equation. He says, even if you don't realize it, when you say I, you start thinking about yourself. And one thing is I became a pastor here, and so great, by the way, love you guys, this is amazing. My father, of all the different things that he had, I'm sure, and still does have concerns. But one of the biggest concerns was to stay humble, because if you get prideful and think, well, I'm the pastor pastor and but then that could cause a lot of problems. If I become prideful in the position that I've been given by Christ, Christ will take away the position he gave me. So he really drilled into me the essence of humility. And in the same way, guys, we have to be humble every step of the way, because nothing says, hey, become a Christian, then you're not a good Christian. I'm a good Christian. I'm better than you are. You should. Does that sound like something you want to be a part of? If we face every circumstance of our Christian faith, even trying to talk to people about it in a prideful manner, that doesn't sound very attractive. I'm the best Christian there is. Ain't no Christian as good as me. I pray like 5 times a day. Like, oh, good for you. Like, no one, that's not what Christ does. Look at, and this is why it's so important to read the Gospels, to study the Gospels, like the class we have on Wednesday night. You see Christ not just tell you to be humble, but you see him live it out. And in the best way possible, he is an example for how you should live it out. Nowhere in there do you see Christ say, oh, well, I'm kind of a big deal around here. Worship and obey thee. No. And we need to be the same way. We need to be proud of him, not of our accomplishments, not of what we do. And in that, we show the love. That love that we're supposed to give to others and to our spouses, it trickles down. It trickles down so easily that the pride never takes over and humility will flourish. In one of my favorite verses, you'd think I'd know it. I don't know the verse, but I know what it says. When Paul says, follow me as I follow Christ, right? So if you want to be proud of something, if you say, I want to be humble, but point to him, right? Man, that was amazing. Hey, all glory be to God. And I'll give credit where credit's due. There are a lot of different, famous people who do that when they have the spotlight on. They do point to Christ. But in the same way, when someone says, man, you are such a great dad, you're such a great spouse, you say, man, if it wasn't for Christ, I wouldn't be able to be here. Take every opportunity. Be annoying a little bit with it, that you always give Christ credit. It's going to make people frustrated. Christ, look, what about you, man? You did. Hey, God's will be done, right? Christ's power lives in me. God, his spirit lives in me. And if it wasn't for that spirit, I don't know where I'd be. And let Christ be at the center of every single aspect of your life. Be humble in Christ. It's a great place to be, guys. I don't want you to think that it's a disappointing life when you always give God credit. Oh, I want credit. No, it's a great feeling to know that you're pointing people to Christ in every situation. So, I want to talk about problems that are created by pride. Different problems that are created by pride. The first problem is that pride often produces misunderstandings. Have you ever met someone they're not the best people to hang out with? They're kind of... Jennifer, stop pointing to your son. See, I love that everyone's thinking of someone right now. Like, hey, the question is, if you know someone, does that mean you know it all? I'm just kidding. But they never really listen to anybody, do they? They never really listen to anybody because they already know it. They already know the answer, right? There was this guy, right? And he took a first aid class. Speaking of class, this is just me ranting to you guys because you have to sit here and listen to me. Me and Dakota went to a special breastfeeding class this past Thursday. And we were sitting in the front row, and like 2 seats beside us is a lady who was like 12 weeks pregnant, but she came with her 37-week pregnant friend because her husband couldn't come. She is having like her second or third child, right? She wasn't the teacher, but she didn't know that. It was one of those people the whole time, well, with my baby, and we're like, we get it. Well, in my experience, I'm like, it was a 2-hour class. We got out there 30 minutes late because she had to make a comment every time someone said something. And it's like, she wasn't listening to anything. There was nothing that lady could have said that she didn't already know. And she had to make sure, well, she thought she knew. And that's the thing, it's when you have a know-it-all, they don't listen. They think they know everything already. They're good. And then, which, I mean, sometimes I do this too, but she would say something. Well, where's Tammy when you need her, right? She would say something, and the teacher says, yeah, I was getting to that, right? I know. I'm going to get that. She goes, oh, a nice warm cloth does wonders. And she's like, that's in the next section. Like, let the lady teach. So when you get around a know-it-all, it just gets frustrating. Because you know why they think they know it all? Because they're prideful. They're proud of what they know, and they must share it with everyone. And in doing so, you hinder the experience for the rest of the class. In the same way, there's an example that I found about a first aid class this guy took. And in this first aid class, he listened, he took notes, he took the fake baby and he took the person and did all the stuff needed. Lucky him. This sounds terrible. Lucky him. 3 weeks later, he saw a crowd. And then he saw a body laying down and someone over it. And he goes, he pushes the crowd aside and he pulls the person off the side and he goes, I know what to do. He says, first, compressions. And he said, look. And then the person he pushed aside says, when you get to the part from your class where it says, call a doctor, let me know, I'll be right here. He thought he knew it all. He thought he had it all figured out. And when you have this proud nature, it takes away the fact that maybe things aren't what you think they are. Maybe there's a possibility that someone knows more than you. Maybe it's possible that there's a different path to take. And that is a way that love flourishes, is when you allow love to go ahead of you. Because let's even think about this. When you're proud, you go above everything else, even the love of Christ, even the passion, anything. Love cannot fit if you are in front of it. So when you humble yourself, you allow when you humble yourself, you allow love to be in the forefront. But when you are very proud, there can easily be many misunderstandings. All right? I know, right? It's crazy. That was the cutest little laugh. She goes, you want more? I got it. She says, I just want to see. You put me down there. I want to see everybody. But there can be misunderstandings when you're proud. I know that me and Dakota do this all the time, and we think we know what the other person's about to say, and then we just end up looking dumb. Like, hey, can you get I already got the milk. She goes, I was going to say gas. So, something like that, right? Where you think you're so like, I got it, I'm smart, I know what you're going to say because we're so in tune. And then she goes, no, if you just listen, right? Or vice versa. Honey, if you just listen, that's not what I was going to say. If we just take pride completely out of our life and we allow ourselves to be humble, we will not have as many misunderstandings. And I think we all can agree, whether it's parent to child or husband to wife, if we could limit misunderstandings, wouldn't that be great? I mean, not all of them are going to go away, but if you could limit some misunderstandings, make marriage a lot easier. Make parenting and I guess kidding? I don't know. Being a kid to a parent, if we could have these misunderstandings kind of nixed by just not we know it all, it'd be easy. I can only imagine parents of teenagers. Apologize. I'm sure they think they know it all. Well, all three of them can't know it all. One of them's got to know. Only one of them can know it all. Yes? Mm-hmm.
But leading up to the birth,
Mm-hmm.
tell people they're not to be including family. And then she gave birth. After that, she went to my breast. And it's so embarrassing. But, and I don't know, I just told my God, so
And see, one thing that reminds me of is, and not necessarily that exactly, but in a similar fashion, the dumbest people are people who aren't willing to learn. People who aren't willing to, because I just thought that because you said like she wouldn't talk to anybody. You know, sometimes other people know something you don't. And it's not necessarily always in the format of a class, right? Sometimes it's just people who've been there before. You know, I was just talking to Tom. He says, I don't think I'm that smart necessarily. I just learned a lot from other people. And that's how we get where we are, is by not having these misunderstandings. Misunderstanding, right? Cut miss off, understanding. If you're not proud, but you are humble, you will understand a lot more. Take the opportunity in life to stop and listen and be willing to be poured into. You know, one of the big things, I had was that one of my teachers installed in me at college. He said, you're in the best place to learn about Christianity. You have famous world leaders and Christian leaders coming here from all over the world. He says, but don't count out just a person who has a relationship with Christ. He says, because they have been through completely different circumstances. Every person has run their own race and learned their own mistakes, learned their own values. He says, never, ever be someone who's not willing to learn. And someone who thinks they know it all and is proud of their knowledge that they know it all misses out. If you find someone who says, I know everything there is to know about any part of the Bible, I know all there is to know about John, or I know all there is to know about the Bible. If you think you know it all about, there's so much more to know about the Bible. There's always, depending on where you are in life, depending on it, there's never a chance that you can know it all of anything. So to cut out these misunderstandings, be willing to learn, and just cut your pride out and start being humble. Secondly, pride provokes arguments. Amen. Proverbs 13:10 says, pride breeds quarrels. Pride breeds quarrels. Guys, if you put two people who know it all in the same room, and you pretty much end up with two irresistible forces, two immovable objects who will not back down or admit that they might be wrong, and they argue and continue until there's no getting out of it. Have you ever met someone who's gonna have the last word, and the other person just hates to lose, even if it's the tiniest game, and then they just go back and forth, and they don't ever stop just bickering? Pride produces arguments. Guys, it's really difficult when these arguments are between, like I said, people you see every day. It's one thing if it's like a friend of yours, but it's when it's, for example, if someone says, hey, can you take the trash out? You should just say, yes. You shouldn't say, oh, you want me to take the trash out? Huh, I thought you were going to take it. Remember that? Oh, man. And guess what? Trash could have been taken out 5 times. But then you just get stuck in the argument because, I know for a fact I wasn't to let, and we start bickering and arguing over the littlest things. And you want to know what's sad? We laugh about it, but it's a little notch, a little nick in the foundation that we have for the love of the person we're bickering with. Now that can be fixed. We can apologize later, but to an extent, when you argue and there's never time for love to flourish, it just becomes a beatdown. Has any of you, have you argued about who started the argument? That's ridiculous, but we do it a lot. We argue all the time. Well, that's because you started it. Oh, you're not going to put this on me. Right? And then it goes back and forth. And it's because one of you has to be wrong, and your pride says it's not going to be me. Right? And when you let that, it's down here somewhere, but I'm a skip to it. What is it? Okay, yeah, I'm going to skip to it. I'll just Cliff Brown said that there are 12 words that are absolutely essential for a good marriage. And I'll say relationship with anybody. Here they are. Ready? This is important. Because when we argue, even if it's your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your best friend, your parents, your spouse, if you argue all the time and you get to the point where you're arguing about who started the argument, it's because, like I said, one of you has to be right. And the other person, or you, if your pride is so heavy that you can't admit that you're wrong, you're not going to make it. These are the 12 words that he says you're going to need. First word, I was wrong. It just sounds nasty coming out your mouth, don't it? I was wrong, right? Just you hate it, but and then the other words after I was wrong is I am sorry. Please forgive me. I love you. I love you. Yeah. You know how hard it is, though, for some people to simply say, I was wrong. Please forgive me. I love you. I forgive you. What? I was kidding. He is making a decent point. Because then that try to out-humble each other. I was wrong. No, baby, I was wrong. No, seriously, you were right, I was wrong. And then it just gets, that's ridiculous too. But pretty much being able to admit that you were wrong is one of the hardest things to do sometimes. But if you won't, look, amen, Bruce. What'd you say? Say it louder. No, if you're not ever wrong. My bad. Dakota, if you're listening, I didn't say that. I get to the point where I know I'm like, honey, you right. Because there's stuff she knows a lot more of than I do. There are things there that I'm pretty sure I'm right about, but you listen here, Donna. June 14th at 9:07 p.m. I was right. Hey, one thing is saying I was wrong. The other thing is when you realize you were wrong, saying you were right. You know, that helps too. Because you love hearing it, but don't get too prideful. But I did skip a little bit, but that's one thing on the next one. Now I got to find where I was. Yeah, I'm pretty much done. Romans 12:16, paraphrasing it, but it says, don't try to act big and don't think you know it all. Truly, pride often provokes arguments. You're not going to find a humble person who's not willing to make a concession that maybe there could be some common ground. Thirdly, I think pride prevents real, authentic fellowship. I think pride prohibits authentic fellowship. So, if you are proud of something, right? Say you're proud of a trophy that you won, and it's got a big dent in it or something broke on it, right? You're going to take it down and you're going to fix it. You're not going to display it again until it's fixed. Wouldn't you generally agree with that statement? If it's something you're really, really proud of, right, you're not going to let them see the broken parts of it. You're going to make sure that it looks perfect, even though maybe people won't realize that it's been repaired and it has cracks in it and it had to be fixed. And I think in the same manner, if we're very proud and very prideful of our life, that it prohibits authentic fellowship to where we show people our flaws. We allow people to see our bruises, our cracks, our disadvantages that we have, because we're so proud of the life that we built that we couldn't fathom letting someone in to see that we're not perfect. And in doing so, you miss out on authentic fellowship of the love of a Christian brother or sister in building you up and showing you the love of Christ. Without that fellowship, when you're trying to act all big and tough and perfect, you try to conceal your real self to say things that they think will impress you and never allow you to see the deep inner struggles that you're going through. I don't care how much you know about the Bible. I don't care how many times you pray a day. If you